Hey, how's it going?
I'm doing great, Callum. How are you doing?
Yeah, not too bad, thank you. Just
Firstly, thank,
surviving the day.
Firstly, thank you very much for giving me opportunity to be on my show.
Yeah, no, that's fine. No, it's cool. I like it.
So I thought to tell about you and the work that you are doing and the work that you already did in your life before. So
hmm
to my audience.
No, that's gonna be really cool. Um, yeah, hopefully I can remember stuff that's interesting.
So before that, can you please introduce yourself?
Yes. So, hi there. I'm Callum Akehurst Ryan. I'm a senior tester with about 15 years of experience. I've worked predominantly in exploratory and manual testing, but I'm a full stack tester and a technical tester with a speciality in both front end, but also in communications and uncovering and chasing information throughout products. I've worked within finance, defense, security. I even worked for eBay for a bit. So I've worked all over, basically. As well as being a tester, I'm a kick-ass dungeon master. I play a lot of Dungeons and Dragons. That's the human side of me. And I'm also known for my many, you can see them there, my many otters, including Ramon the testing otter, who is my little testing mascot.
You are from?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I'm from Luton in the UK. And currently I live in central London.
So you are into testing from last 15 years.
Yes, yes. After I left university, I worked at a bank, well, a financial company, at the very least, in customer services. And it was really cool because they were offering apprenticeships in testing. I heard about it through a friend of mine who started on the same day as me. So she was a tester. She has just started at this company as a tester. I had started in customer services. And a couple of years in, she said, "Hey, you'd be good at this. You should apply." And yeah, I started off as an apprentice tester, working there, learned lots of things, lots of manual and scripted testing, sorts of functional testing back then, and also running user acceptance testing. And then, yeah, worked my way up through there.
So how is this experience? 15 years of testing.
Oh, that's a good question. It's been really interesting in as much as I feel that I've learned and grown quite a lot. Um, Originally, when I was working in the south of England, in Southampton and so on, I was learning how to do things and trying things out. Definitely learning about concepts like exploratory testing, learning how to get more involved with developers, learning agile ways of working, because over that 15 years, we shifted from very waterfall projects in banking. I started looking at more agile ways of working. And since about the last 5 years, I've sort of shifted over to working in London, and it's really kick-started like how I feel about testing and the types of testing that I do as well. So being really involved in agile teams, really involved in exploration and being almost like a consultant within teams, like coming in, exploring information and pushing it up. It's really given me like a different feeling for testing, getting really excited about it. So much so that I now blog about testing and I speak about testing and all that good stuff. So I would say originally I had like a view of testing and a view of what I was doing in the testing space. But since moving to London, I've definitely like ramped it up and share a lot more with my testing as well.
Any particular experience that you cannot forget as software tester in this 15 years?
Oh wow. A moment that's I can't forget. I mean, there's lots of things. I would say I definitely remember being asked to test some banking software, and I was locked in a room with no windows for the whole day to test it with a dead man switch to actually test the Swift transactions for this product. So because it was so secure, basically you had to be shut into a room and there was a switch that you had to press in order to keep the terminal working and alive. So that was an interesting experience. Um, definitely that's one thing. And I think as well, going to my first test bash, like in 2018, I think it was, but my first test bash going, being around other testers, being able to talk to them, and actually going up and doing a 99-second talk was also like a big, like unforgettable moment, just seeing the community and the people around and talking to other people about testing as well was really exciting.
So how the software testing is playing a role in software industry in the world?
Ooh. So yeah, that's a good question as well. So software testing is so important within software engineering generally. Not so much anymore for the QA aspects of it, although that's quite important as well, but much more in that transforming side of things and that championing side of things. As we move faster and our engineering becomes faster and more complicated because software solutions are way more complicated than it used to be, software testing is here to rally the troops and also to be a champion for what quality can be. It's shifting way more from that QA, like I said, of rubber stamping something at the end of a project, and way more towards trying to work out what does good look like in the first place. We've got a lot of smart people doing a lot of work in very tight timelines and constantly working, and we have CI/CD pipelines, so we have deliveries constantly going in. What we need are people that can help take the burden and the cognitive load off of our engineering teams to go, okay, great. What does good look like? Why are we building this? What do we need to do to make this a success? So testing is still just as relevant as ever. And I would say even manual testing is just as relevant as ever, because that sort of same skill that you would use to think about the product and do that business analysis side of things now becomes part of shifting your testing left, talking about what does acceptance criteria, what does good look like for a project, but also being, as I said, a consultant and a champion for testing. So going, hey, looks like we want to, speed through this. Looks like we want this to look good in this way. Here are some ideas that I've had about testing. I'm like an expert in testing. I can help you come up with what does testing look like for this project. So I would say testing in software engineering at the moment is really exciting. We see at the forefront in that greenfield development, very startup space, lots of consultative action, lots of talking about testing, lots of championing it. But we see that all the way through to lots of other project teams, lots of other companies where testers are still those troops on the ground, those people who are doing good testing every day, coming up with test cases and so on as well. So we can't forget, even though sometimes in conversations like this, in the Twitter bubble, there are whole conversations about people just talking about shifting testing left, pipelines, automation, really exciting engineering challenges. There are also testers, all over the world who are doing a lot of great things, just coming in, testing things, asking questions, raising bugs, and doing very traditional, either scripted testing or end-to-end testing as well. That was a really long answer, sorry.
So what is your present role and responsibility, and what do you like most about your job?
So I am currently a senior QA tester at Improbable. That means that I am embedded into project teams and work within a very startup-y kind of environment. This company is building a lot of new products and trying to solve problems that have never been solved before, and are building things where we're in a massive environment of uncertainty. We don't know what we need to build all of the time. We've got a customer that's saying, hey, it'd be cool if we did this, but they're not telling us exactly what they want. And that means that my role as an embedded tester is going, cool, this could mean this, or saying, hey, the risks in this are this. What does good look like for this? So asking a lot of really key questions, as well as being involved in the team to say, hey, I've explored this. I've come up with a lot of exploratory tests. I've dug through the system, chased data down, found this nasty issue, ready so that we can fix it before we pilot or go with to our users with anything. So yeah, as a senior tester, I not only have to come in and test things, but I'm also that voice in the team of saying, hey, what does good look like? What needs to happen here? I've noticed this. Is this a problem? And because I was one of the first testers, in fact, I was the first tester that the company ever had on the defense side of things, I was able to come in and say, hey, here's what testing can look. So not just talking theoretically about testing, but going in and saying, right, here's a practical solution for what we need. So I've been able to do a lot of talks, a lot of training, and write a lot of documents to add processes in and be that voice of quality within a couple of teams now, but also train up and help other people. And as they come in, have them pick up things and take them further and make them even better. So yeah, it's a lot of really good, interesting work in a startup-y kind of environment.
So what the software testing job helped you to be a good human being?
Oh, to be a good human. Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Being a tester really means having good amounts of empathy for people as well, because you have to be able to go, hey, I found this information out about something. It's not that it's bad or that you've done bad or anything like that. It's just, here's the state of play. Here's where we're at with things. Is this good? Do we want it to be that? Do we want to change it? So I think that being a tester not only lift you up in terms of like learning skills and learning abilities, it gives you different ways of talking to people. And it's a different way of talking to people because of that power dynamic between people. So you as a tester have all this information about like what's good, but also what's bad about something. And you have to make a decision as a human to go, hey, I've got this information about how this isn't necessarily how we want it to be. It might be bad. It might make you feel sad. How am I going to give that information to you as another human being? So I think you grow a lot in your abilities as a person to communicate to people, talk to them, and relay information. So definitely helps you, but also you're in a great role to be able to present things, to talk to people. I do a lot of like demos to people. I talk and champion issues and I say, hey, we need to fix this. It needs to be a good product. Here's why I think it needs to be fixed. It's human skills of being able to win people over, talk to them, be a bit charismatic. So yeah, really grow as a person using your skills that you're using as a tester all the time.
And you as a dungeon master.
Yeah. So I was the UK's first paid dungeon master for a charity. So for anyone who doesn't know what a dungeon master is, in the games of Dungeons and Dragons, so role-playing games, which is basically like group storytelling, but in a game format. The dungeon master is the person who runs the game. So let's say you wanted to come and play Dungeons and Dragons and you're a character. You wanted to be a wizard or a knight or you wanted to be a rogue or a monk. You come with a character and you say, hey, I want to go and do some cool adventures. My job as a dungeon master is to come here with a story to tell you so that you as a character can play and do a bit of role play, roll some dice, fight some evil monsters, and have a great time. We wanted to use Dungeons and Dragons as a game, as a type of group therapy with a charity called Survivors UK. They're a charity who help give therapy to male victims of sexual abuse. And especially during lockdown, lots of men were feeling lonely. They didn't have like groups that they could like communicate to. So we put together these Dungeons and Dragons games that involved me as a dungeon master running the session, like as a group work facilitator, but there was also a therapist there as well. So we could run our game. People were able to come with characters that may or may not have involved like some things they wanted to work through from a therapeutic point of view. And I was able to come in, help them explore that, but there was a therapist on side as well. But as part of that job and as part of being a dungeon master and playing Dungeons and Dragons and role-playing games generally, I found that there was a lot of skills that were transferable to software testing. And I gave a talk at Test Bash X this year in Brighton to talk about all the things that I'd learned from my hobby, Dungeons and Dragons, that made me a better tester. Things like teamwork, playing as part of a team. You were able to actually learn different people had different skills. You can't be the person that's always doing everything. You've got to hand some things over because they might be better at it. There's the ability to craft and tell stories. Storytelling is a really important part of testing. It's not just enough to say there are 23 bugs on the system. You're not going to win any other people over that way. You need to be able to say, I found these bugs. I found some bugs with the UI. It's going to cause a big problem for people. If they try and buy this thing, they're going to get really confused. It's going to be really problematic for them. So using storytelling, trying to evoke a bit of emotion into what you're saying helps win people over so they go, yeah, I'll fix that bug. But there's also things like in Dungeons and Dragons, it's improv. Improv basically is a type of storytelling where lots of people come together and they just make up stuff as they go, like make believe or telling stories. In improv, one of the best rules you have is yes and that means building on people's ideas rather than saying no, won't work, no. Because as soon as you say no to something, you stop it and it doesn't continue and it doesn't grow. As a tester, that's really important as well. If you're sat in an architectural meeting and people are trying to design a new thing, if you look at something and go, nah, then you have to start again. It doesn't work. But if something comes along and you see a problem with it, you can say, okay, yeah, I see what you're doing there. And if the network fails, we can throw an error message. That's a yes, and it takes things further. It's helping solutionize. It's helping solve bugs before they even happen as well. So lots of these skills that we can take from games like Dungeons and Dragons can be used in testing. I think that my full talk is probably not available on the Ministry of Testing, but I'll probably give it again at some point. So if you're ever interested in learning more about how Dungeons and Dragons and being a dungeon master can teach you more about testing, reach out to me and I'm more than happy to, give that talk again at some point.
Great. And before this, you worked as senior tester in Bloom and Wild in 2020 for 4 months. How was that experience?
Yeah, I worked there. They were really cool. I was able to work there after a period during lockdown. And I came in and worked with a team doing a lot of front end testing. They were building some really cool e-commerce sites stuff. There was a lot of A to B testing going on there. So we were trialing out different types of user interface and getting reports back on it to say, hey, this is a better way of presenting this. People are clicking on it more. We love it. It's awesome. But because they were running so many little experiments, we had to test for regression quite a lot. And they were at a point where they were trying to build up their automation testing capabilities. So lots of manual testing, lots of exploring things and trying to work out what would happen. But because it was a live site, we weren't developing and then releasing like Big Bang. It was lots of little changes that was happening to a product that was already live. So much exploration was needed in order to go, okie dokie, cool. If we go live with this, what happens if this person tries to use it? What happens if they've got bookmarks for this site? What happens if they've already got something in their basket and we need to make sure they can buy it? So loads of testing ideas because, again, e-commerce as well. But it was a really great site and it was a really good place to work at. I was able to embed in with lots of people and really it was a really good culture. That was really cool as well.
Great. And before this, you worked as senior test engineer at Scott Logic for 1 year, 10 months in 2020 June or
Yeah,
September.
Yes. I was a consultant at Scott Logic. That was a really interesting role. So being a test consultant is really interesting. It's different from being a contractor where you come in and like just do a lot of work. Being a consultant basically means coming into somewhere, like I said before, with being in startups, coming into someone going, hey, I'm really good at testing. Let me come up with ideas for you for how testing should be. So rather than being told, here's our testing framework, please do that, it's you coming going, cool, I've come and had a look, I've seen what you're doing, let's come up with a testing approach for you. So we did some really interesting work. We were trying to solve a lot of problems that other people hadn't been able to solve. One of the best ones that we had was we worked on a project where people had developed something, they'd developed a system, and because their contract had run out, they took all the documentation away with them. So this company was left with some software, some code that they couldn't deploy, that they couldn't stand up, and they didn't know how good it was. And in some cases, they didn't even know what it did. QA, an exploratory tester. I came in. I worked with a number of developers and DevOps engineers and other testers to stand up this bit of code. We stood it up in an environment and we started exploring to see what happened. We worked alongside the CTO and the CFO to say, hey, here are some things that we're seeing that it does. Is this good? What would you like it to do? And we basically unpicked all of this code, ran through everything, and it was very technical. It was like it was a piece of blockchain technology. So we had to work out what it did, all these apps that were built on it, how it connected to other systems, and how it worked. But explored it in a structured way, constantly giving feedback back to the business to say, here's what we've seen happening. Do you want it to do that? We think this might be a problem. We think this might not be a problem. And we think this might be good. And then giving lots of demos to the business as well in order to get this piece of software working so that they had an application and a mobile app at the end of the day. Because it was so successful, we were then able to start helping them with some of their front end design work and talk to them and go, hey, here's your app. Do you want it to look this way? Do you want it to be these colors? That gives this kind of psychological feeling when you use it. So it was a really cool piece that we were able to come in and really spread wide and go, hey, we can stand up some software and we can use exploratory testing to find out what we don't know about this product, which was basically everything. So really, really, really interesting and really interesting technical challenge as well, because I'd never seen this product. I'd never seen the code and I'd never seen the services that it was using. Lots of WebSockets, lots of integrations to pieces of technology that I'd never seen before. And we just explored it, documented what was going on, worked out what was good. So yeah, a big win for exploration. Being a consultant as well meant I had a lot of opportunities to go and do a lot of talks. I went to a lot of places to run bug bashes, and I went to a lot of places to talk about exploratory testing, run Ask Me Anythings, and try and train people up and give people a bit of a starting position on like what different types of testing look like. That's where I started writing some blog posts. I wrote my blog post on why I'm talking to developers about exploratory testing at that place, and gave it as a presentation, talked about it a lot. And I even, as part of working at Scott Logic, went all the way up to Newcastle from London in order to run some workshops for kids who might want to become testers someday. So I gave an exploratory testing workshop to some kids, and that was really cool as well, because they got to see testing as a viable career option, and it didn't necessarily mean that you had to have a computer science degree to get into it, because I'd come in through an apprenticeship role. So yeah, that was a really interesting job as well. I fully recommend consultancy if you like coming up with test approaches and seeing lots of different organizations and going, hey, here's a different problem that this person wants to solve, and here's another one as well.
And I can see you also worked as a as a test lead and agile team lead before this at Nice Limited. for 2 years, 2 months in
Yeah.
2015.
Yeah, that was a really interesting role. So this was an organization who I came in and it was an organization who basically had just been starting down their agile journey. And they wanted really cool solutions to how do we test in an agile environment? How do we work in an agile environment? And I'd had a bit of experience working as an agile coach and as a project manager before. And not only did I help lead the way in being a test lead and helping testers who were working in the UK, but also in Ukraine as well, come up with different ways of doing testing. So we did a semi-test script, semi-exploratory testing thing where we just wrote the title of the test and then explored it. And we put those into our test rail tool so that we still had the reporting for it. So it was kind of that in-between kind of way of doing things that basically saved us a lot of time on scripting, helped us get into sprints as well. I did a lot of work to show people how we could report on testing in sprints. So less numbers based, more focused on what was good and what was bad. But I also ran all of the ceremonies and acted as a scrum master for one of their agile teams. And it was a hugely successful agile team. We came up with a cool team name. We were Team Dino Thunder, and we had a theme tune, and people really enjoyed working on that project. I was able to start implementing like proper retrospectives, get people like actually taking actions away from those retrospectives, and we really changed up how we did development. I worked really closely with the developers on my team, so we could sit next to each other. We did pairing, so we actually paired to make changes to the front and the back end. And yeah, we had a really great time, sort of like really working as a close-knit team together, just focusing on like knocking out some really cool. It was data buckets in Elasticsearch and Kibana. We were taking loads of data from a third-party source and visualizing them and doing trend analysis on a map of crime statistics. So it was really awesome stuff, really technically complex, and it needed a lot of testing, but a lot of cool thinking about something as well. So that was a really interesting one. I like that. You're getting less information as I go down because I'm having to try and remember some of my older jobs now.
That's great. And before this, you worked as QA test analyst in Omnico Group in 2014 to 2015, 1 year, 4 months.
Yeah, not loads to say about this other than I worked with a couple of testers on some point of sale systems. So this was like a lot more, wasn't necessarily hardware testing. The hardware had already been built, but it was the software on top of that. And it was really cool. I worked in a test lab, which was like a server room with a couple of other testers, just regression testing, some point of sale systems, some tills, effectively. And I started to try and make testing a lot more visible for everyone at the company. Historically, they had just testing going on a bit willy-nilly, wherever it was. And what they really wanted from that was test reporting and testing that was a bit more structured. So I was able to say, hey, let's use the bugs that we've got. Let's use the test tooling that we've got and actually start reporting on projects, and created some test reports. I even had a big whiteboard, and the big whiteboard basically gave a status on this project. Here's where we're at with things. It was looking good or it's not looking good. Here are the issues that we're seeing. I created some dashboards for people so that they could go, hey, here's what things are looking like here. So yeah, it was a pretty cool job. I got to work with some really cool people, and because we were in a little test lab together, we built up like a really good friendship group. And so I was really like embedded in with them and testing, and we had a great time. But other than that, yeah, not a lot of like very specific, exciting testing that happened on that one. The most interesting thing I think that I could say was we were testing the translations of a lot of tills. So it was being a worldwide till, needed to have translations for things. And one of the buttons on there kept saying curriculum vitae. in Japanese even, it said curriculum vitae, CV. I was like, why is there a button for that? Well, I noticed that the translation had been incorrectly from resume to resume to curriculum vitae. So we read, that's why that's wrong. So we were able to get back to the translation and go, no, we don't want it to say resume. We want it to say resume, continue. That's what we want it to say. So that was like one of the most interesting bugs that I saw there. So yeah, a good thing for when you're doing translations. Sometimes things look good, but words that look the same sometimes get knocked out. So I only noticed that because I'd studied Japanese. And I was able to phonetically read it out and go, wait a sec, that says curriculum vitae. What's that all about? So it was worth knowing a few words in different languages. Or get Google Translate up and start looking yourself.
That's great. And before this, you worked as test consultant at the Testing Solutions Group in 2014.
Yeah, that was a very short-term thing. I'd moved to London, and I wanted to see if I could get into consultancy for that. That one wasn't necessarily quite for me. It was a big bank that I was consulting for, and I never really quite got to grips with it, unfortunately. So it was a role that I decided to leave, and I moved back from London to back to Southampton at that time. I just got married. And I was like, I didn't actually want to be away from my new family and my new house. So it never really quite worked. I think trying to do too much at once. So getting married, but also moving to a new town, brand new job as well. So definitely a lesson there. Don't try and do too much all at once. Like focus on like doing your family or focus on career at different times. Like it's no problem to not try and have everything all at once. So yeah, for me, it was a bit of a sad time because I thought, hey, I'm going to move to London. It's going to be awesome. But my partner didn't like London as well. So we were definitely quite apart from each other. And that made it really hard to, really get into things. So I left there quite quickly, but, these things happen. And, I came back, had a few more jobs, came back to London when I worked at eBay. And, it worked a lot better that time because I came with my family that time, as opposed to say, having my family over here and I was living alone. So definitely a lesson learned on that one. Don't try to, do everything all at once because getting married, moving house, all very stressful. New job stressful as well. So definitely don't try to do it all.
Okay. So before this, you worked as a QA test analyst at Cisco Systems for 1 year.
Yeah, that was the first actually. So before then, so all of my jobs had been at Scandia, and which was somewhere that I'd worked for, I want to say about 7 years in total. Really long time that I worked at Scandia. And that was the first time when I went to Cisco, was the first time that I'd left there and gone to work somewhere else. And this was a company that was very engineering focused. There was a lot of hardware testing and a lot of very heavy engineering going on in the broadcasting sector. So I worked with a lot of really cool people who were really clever, but was speaking about all these really complex broadcasting terms, and also talking about like switches and lots of networking stuff. So it was a big shock to my system coming in from the banking environment and being like, I don't actually know a lot about this domain. I don't know anything about broadcasting. So it was the first time that I had to come out of my comfort zone, learn a different domain. But I realized that I could bring all of my testing experience to that new domain. So I came in and I helped them set up test reporting, looking at what testing looks like at that company, and also using their test tools to say, hey, here's what the status of this project could look like. Here's what quality could look like for this project. So that was when I was able to teach them something about testing and different ways of testing, especially coming from the banking industry, where testing is very regulated and needs to be very controlled. But at the same time, it was the first time that I was able to go, do you know what? It's not that bad moving to another organization, a different organization. It seems really scary, especially if like you've worked somewhere for a very long time going, I just know this company, I just know this one way of doing things. But actually you'll find that your skills will transfer over, especially as a tester. If you're able to do critical analysis, if you're able to learn new projects, if you're able to like pick up things and report on them, you can do that on any product. So that's why I got into consultancy. That's why I got into working at a number of different organizations, because at the end of the day, you go, do you know what? I can learn this new thing. And it's really interesting to learn a new thing. So it's really cool to say, come in and go, do you know what? I am going to learn this new thing. I am going to try, go into this new business, learn this new thing, and it gives you a bit of a shot in the arm. And it gets you really excited about work again. Or for me, it did anyway, because I like learning new things. And that's what it taught me, is that, going somewhere completely new gets you really excited for learning new things and doing new things as well.
And you as a test lead at Capita IT Services.
Yeah, so Capita and then Scandia before it. So like all of my previous jobs now is all like one company effectively. So I worked at Scandia for about 7 or so years. I don't know how long it was. It was quite a long time. And this was the company that I came in, and I worked in customer services initially. And my friend on the same day, we got to know each other. She was a tester, and she's like, hey, come for this apprenticeship. And that's where I worked, not just as a test apprentice, where I had a couple of years being an apprentice, and then as a tester on a number of different projects. But I also did a little sidestep. I worked as a project coordinator, so I was doing my project management at the time, and I did my Prince 2, which was great. But I also then worked as the project portfolio analyst, so working in the PMO office. So I got to see project management. I got to see, how do people want to learn about the quality of projects from the other side of things? So going as a project manager, going, right, I need to know about this, this, and this. And I'm really worried about finances. I'm really worried about like the scope of work. Have we delivered it well? And then also from the project portfolio analyst side of things, going, right, now I understand how projects are resourced, how projects are financed, and all that kind of thing. So it gave me a big understanding of not just testing, but projects in general. So they were really cool in that they were able to teach me a lot of those things. Once I'd done all the project management stuff, I came back to testing, but by that time they'd outsourced their testing to Capita. So I came in and I slotted back in as a test lead, working with offshore people, offshore testers, working across a number of projects, and I was helping to coordinate and manage. I talked to the people on site, so I could say, hey, what do we want this project to do? What does good look like for this project? Talking to the business analyst to say, we've come up against these things. Is this the right thing? And then I was able to then talk to the offshore teams and say, hey, right, here's the information that I've got. Here's how it's going to support testing as well. So I worked there for a number of years, and I worked across so many projects. Probably the best testing that I ever did at Scandia was when I sat next to the procurements team for that company, and they were looking for a brand new supplier for their canteen, and I got to do the testing of all of the food for all the different suppliers. So we got to come in one day, and they were like, right, here are 3 different companies. They've prepared different lunch boxes, and you can try those and say which one is the best one and give us feedback, because you're a tester. And I was like, this is awesome, I'm going to do that. So yeah, really, really cool. And I'm really grateful that I managed to like work for that company, because they got me on the path to testing. They took me in as an apprentice, no computer science, never done anything in IT before. And so they grew me, and they allowed me to work on the project side of things to learn more about projects, and then come back as a tester with all that project knowledge and that project management skills that I had in order to help grow me as a person as well. So yeah, really cool organization to work at, and really cool to get me going. And I'm always thankful to like my first ever test manager, Sarah, for teaching me the ways of things, and like all the different testers that I learned so much from as well. and also like different test architects that I worked with. There was a test architect called Abby and one called Jeff who showed me, the technical side of testing, that it wasn't all just business cases and business logic, that there was like a technical aspect to it as well. So yeah, I learned a lot from doing that. If you've never worked in a bank or a financial institution as a tester, I recommend it because you learn a lot about like really having to audit yourself and provide good testing evidence for things. So definitely worthwhile getting in on testing.
Great. And before this, you worked as a project portfolio analyst at Scandia.
Yeah, so that was what I was just talking about, all of those roles at Scandia. So yeah, definitely that was the portfolio analyst side of things, and the project coordinator was that project management side of things that they grew me into. One of the most interesting things I did there was I actually went out to France and tried to give a presentation about project management tooling to a set of French project managers. And my French is not that good. So we had a great time trying to understand this project management tool with me going, speaking in some very broken French to try and help them understand it. But it was really cool. And I also went to Italy as well to help them understand this project management tool. I didn't do so much training then, but we drank a lot of espresso and it was really nice to be out there.
I got you. And before this, you worked as, in that only as a project coordinator,
Yeah.
Scandia.
Yeah, so that was the project management role that I worked in as well. So I was able to work on a couple of projects and learn and get my Prince 2 project management certification at the same time. And yeah, it was really cool. I learned a lot about project management techniques for working in things. I was able to work on a really massive portfolio of work, and I took a lot of minutes, and I did a lot of risk analysis and risk management, and I also learned some facilitation. This is a really important thing as a tester as well. I went on some facilitation courses, so for project management and meeting facilitation, learning how to do like risk management, learning how to facilitate conversations and make sure that people are being heard, or learning about like what people want to hear in meetings, what's important to say in meetings is really important and a really useful skill to have as a tester. Lots of times testers come into meetings and they're either quite quiet and they don't say a lot, or they say, yeah, there's bugs. They just try and get their bit over and done with. They don't communicate things. If you go to facilitation courses or learn how to talk to project people, you can learn that what they're really interested in is about like the actual quality of what we're talking about. They don't just want to know, yeah, I did some tests. They know you did some tests because you worked some days. They want to know, right, here's where we are with things. We've looked at this and this and this, and this is good and this is bad and this is bad. That's going to stop you going live. So learning from project managers, learning how to get involved in meetings or what the purpose of meetings are is a really useful skill to have, because then you can come in and rather than being quiet and just watching, you can get involved and say, no, my point is to say, this is good, this is good, this is going to stop us. We need to focus on what's going to stop us. So I'd say definitely worthwhile coming in, learning a bit of project management and learning, just how projects work. So yeah, that was a really interesting role for me.
Awesome. And you worked as a test analyst. I think you said
Yeah,
about Scandia.
yeah, definitely. This is the job where I did so much stuff. I got to be an apprentice, and then I worked my way up to being a test analyst over 3 years, doing loads of really cool stuff. I worked not just as a functional tester, but I also ran lots of user acceptance testing for people, got to sit with them, learn what they did, and then help them with their user acceptance and usability testing. Which is something that I'm really passionate about even now. So all the way back there, years and years ago, I learned about usability testing, and I still use some of those techniques today. And one of the coolest things we did is we wanted to replicate an actuarial system. We wanted to build a test tool to replicate it. How do you do that? Well, you come up with all of the actuarial rules and you plug them as macros and functions into Excel. Because why wouldn't you? And we built an Excel tool that would allow us to mimic the software that was being developed so we could do input-output testing on them. But the Excel document was so big, we had to have our own server to run it on. So we had to partition a server to put this Excel sheet on so that we could do our testing. And it's probably the biggest Excel document that I've ever created. But I learned every single formula for Excel ever. And it's helped me in all of my reporting, and I can use Excel brilliantly now. So never underestimate the power of being able to knock out your own test tool for things or a test harness and do a bit of coding yourself.
Tell me one that particular thing you as a test analyst in Scandia at that time, which is in 2007, that you did that is helping you in your present job.
Ooh, something that's definitely helping me. So that so many things, like learning about usability testing. Has been really important for me because usability testing is something that I'm really passionate about even today, like accessibility and usability in products. So we learned how to do that. I learned how to engage with users, engage in user acceptance testing, and say, hey, I need to have empathy for you as somebody. What's going to look good in developing this? So I learned about that. And then the old traditional one, I cut my teeth on traditional testing skills. You know, I learned how to write good bug reports because it was a bank, and I was working separately to the developers. So I learned how to communicate issues clearly and concisely, and that's something that even years and years and years ago that I learned how to do, I'm still doing today. Just in a different way. I do it via Jira tickets now rather than on an old bug reporting system. So I would say, you know, so many skills that I learned all the way back then that I'm using today.
And also working in Scandia for years, how that experience is helping you today in your present job.
Ooh, yeah, that's a difficult one because you sort of got to think in and be like, ooh, how did that help me? So I guess I wasn't afraid to look for opportunities. I worked at Scandia for a long time, but I looked for opportunities to grow as a person. And that was either to move from being a tester to being a project coordinator and then a portfolio analyst and then back to being a tester. Um, but also learning how to like learn as a tester in the first place, like learning new skills and growing as a person. I think that being in that kind of safe environment where I was able to learn a lot of new things meant that I'm now comfortable with coming into agile projects, comfortable coming into startups and just hitting the ground running and going, do you know what? I'm not scared. I know I've got this. I've learned things in the past. I've worked on different projects. I've worked as a different type of, discipline in the past. Those are things that I've learned and I can use even today. Just being at a company, trying lots of different things because I felt safe doing it in this one company because I was always at the same company means that now I'm able to try different companies, try working at different places and be a consultant and use all my skills, but always learn new ones as well.
So one particular thing that you learned as a test lead at Capita IT services that is helping you in your present role.
Um, yeah, just the ability to delegate. I was a test lead. I was able to come in and say, hey, I can't do all of this work. There's lots of people's worth of work. So learning to let go of my testing, say, hey, other people can help me. And that's really useful because especially when you're working in agile teams, you need everybody to be helping you to test. You need all the developers helping you to test, writing unit tests, doing some exploratory testing. You've got to champion it like as if you were a lead, champion other people doing that testing, get the information you need from them, but trusting that they're doing it and that they're doing the right thing. So I would say being a test lead back there for an offshore team really helped me to learn how to just let go and to let me get everyone in my modern agile teams, testing and me going, I don't need to do all of this. I can help other people and facilitate them and also coordinate and champion testing rather than doing it all myself.
And you as a QA test analyst at Cisco Systems. So one particular thing that is helping you today.
That's the thing that I learned from there. Um, that taught me to not be scared of change. Nowadays, I try lots of different things and I jump into them and I hit the ground running with them, and it's very exciting. So I would say, like, that was the first time that I left my company of a long time, and I, embraced the new. I embraced something completely different, and yeah, it showed me that I have things that I can give to people and give to organizations that are new, as well as them giving me new opportunities as well.
Awesome. And you as test consultant, one particular thing.
Uh, that would be that you shouldn't try to do too many things at once. And yes, I can move to London, but it's always better to move to London with your family rather than doing it alone. You need to have your people around you.
Great. And one particular thing as a QA test analyst that is helping you today.
Oh, at Omnico, I learned some consultative skills. I learned that I could come into an organization or a team and know things and implement them. And even if I'm not the test manager, even if I'm not the test lead, maybe I've got the skills, maybe I know things. So from that organization, I was able to go, do you know what? Yes, I know some things. I'm going to help you. I'm not the test manager, but I'm going to come up with an approach for you. And that's a really useful skill to have as a tester, because you're that consultant, you're that one championing things.
And you as a test lead and agile team lead at NICE Limited.
I learned how to work side by side with my developers. I made big friends with my little team of agile developers, and I worked really closely with them. So I learned how to pair and work and just get in there with my developers, build good relationships. Really handy for working with other agile teams. Another thing that I learned that was really, really useful, working with offshore people in Ukraine and only being able to communicate to them via video calls was really, really helpful during the COVID pandemic, because I'd already had the skills and I'd already had the practice in building relationships with people online. So that was a really useful skill. Turns out I didn't know I needed, but I really did.
Fantastic. And as a quality engineer.
So at eBay, yeah, I learned how to blog. I'm now a big blogger. You can find me blogging at CAkehurstRyan.com. And I learned from my test manager, Dan Ashby, at eBay, about getting started with blogging, putting my thoughts out there, because my voice might be the one that actually reaches people. So big thing I learned from that is to start blogging, put some words out there, and share things that you've learned, because maybe the way that you explain it is the way that gets through to people.
And last two roles that is helping you in your present job is senior test engineer at Scott Logic and senior tester at Bloom and Wild.
Yeah, so things that I've learned from them that have really helped me in my current role. That consultative piece and that exploratory piece. Coming in and being a full stack exploratory tester, being able to open things up, chase APIs, chase data through to the back end and services, not being afraid of Kubernetes, building your own API to see how they work, training other people on that, learning how Docker works, learning how Kubernetes and DevOps works, and learning how deployments works. All of those technical, meaty, delicious things are definitely not just for automation engineers. They're for manual testers. They're for exploratory testers too. Do not be afraid of them. You can do it. You can get involved. You can open up things, open up a dev console and chase data. You've probably used SQL in the past. If you can use SQL, you can do most other things as well. You've probably used Excel in the past and used some formulas. That means that you're probably able to get in there and understand how APIs, how logic, how code works. You can do it. So the biggest thing that I learned that helped me was just getting involved, jumping in, getting technical with my exploratory testing.
And I'll put your web links in the description of this video on YouTube. People who finds our video on YouTube can see the work that you're doing and can learn from what you did and what you post on social media and on your website as well. Hello. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. So, at last, what is as a software senior software engineer, as a person who is into IT industry from long time, what is your observation about my work? Have you seen any videos of mine on YouTube?
I haven't yet. I'm really sorry. So but I will say it's really important being able to share experiences. So from what I've seen of your YouTube work, you're like giving voices to people. You're getting people to share their experiences, and especially in testing, sometimes you're the only tester, and you can feel very alone. And you can say, do you know what? Actually, like, am I right in doing things? And feel quite scared by you giving interviews and by letting people talk and give their experiences, people can watch them and say, do you know what? I'm not alone and I am doing the right thing. And maybe they can't go to conferences, maybe they don't, blogs aren't the way forward for them, but seeing YouTube videos of other testers being interviewed, sharing their experiences, people are going to go, yeah, that's just like me. I'm not alone. Or they might go, do you know what? That person did it. I can do that too. And then they might want to grow themselves as well. So I would say what you're doing in the YouTube space and what you're doing in the testing space, just interviewing people and getting them to share their experiences, is so important. Because one thing that we forget about, especially if you're in the blogging or the Twitter bubble for testing, lots of people are talking about modern technical challenges, lots of ways to do testing. Oh, here's a type of testing. People forget the human aspect of it. And I don't know if we talk enough about like, we are testers, but we are people as well. So let's share our experiences. Let's be human to each other and let's be cool to each other and let's learn from each other. So, and it's not just those couple of people at the top of the industry who know all the great stuff. Everyone has stuff to share too. So I would say what you're doing by giving people those voices is super important, and it's something that we should be, celebrating.
And right now, I'm a cloud DevOps specialist. So, how talking with experts like you who already did the work and who already solved different kind of problems, working in different companies and different roles, absorbing all this information from different experts from different parts of the world, how this experience is going to helpful for me in my job.
Well, hopefully, if nothing else, you find some information or different types of information that speak to you, help you solve a problem, or at the very least, make you feel like you're not alone in what you're doing. There are other cloud experts out there doing some really cool things. Maybe you want to connect with them. Maybe you want to share what you're doing with them so you can celebrate together what you're doing. But having people put information out there on socials, having people talk about like challenges that they've solved, it's going to help other people as well, right? Developers have Stack Overflow, where they can copy paste solutions to things. What do we have? We have each other talking about ways that we've solved testing problems, talking about how we've solved the human problems of talking to teams. So we are our own Stack Overflow as a community. So having these things really helps as well.
Can I put this video on my YouTube channel with your permission?
Yes, of course.
And also, can I put this audio and video clip on my podcast, website, internet, social media, everywhere with your permission?
Yes, of course.
Yeah. Thank you again, Callum, for giving me your valuable time and sharing your experience with my audience and to the world who are watching this and listening to you from anywhere on this planet.
Yeah, no, it's been great. Thank you so much.
Keep going, keep inspiring.
Thank you. You too.
Take care.
Right, I've got to go.
Bye.
Bye.